High above Yosemite Valley, a man stands on a ledge barely wider than his foot. Below him, 3,000 feet of nothing. His name is Alex Honnold, and he is about to do the impossible. This is free solo climbing, no ropes, no second chances, no room for mistakes. The average person sees danger. Alex sees something else. He sees the wall, the tiny cracks for his fingers, the way his foot presses into the rock. Nothing else exists. Not the crowd below, not the cameras, not even the thought of falling. In this moment, Alex Honnold is experiencing what psychologists call the flow state, a mental zone where action and awareness merge, where time disappears, where fear dissolves, and where human beings become their absolute best. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the man who first studied this phenomenon, once said, "The best moments in our lives are not the passive, receptive, relaxing times. The best moments usually occur when a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile. This is flow, the intersection of skill, challenge, and complete immersion." Over the next minutes, we will travel through ancient samurai battlefields in Japan, the minds of Renaissance painters like Leonardo da Vinci, the cutting-edge neuroscience labs of Johns Hopkins University, and into the training grounds of Navy SEALs and Olympic athletes. All to answer one question. How can ordinary people like you and me unlock this extraordinary state on command? As Alex climbs higher, something fascinating happens inside his brain. Scientists later studied him and found his amygdala, the fear center of the brain, barely reacted to images of danger. But it's not just genetics, it's training. Years of honing his craft until the mind stops chattering and the body simply performs. And while few of us will ever climb a wall like Alex, all of us have tasted flow. The student lost in studying for hour, the gamer in a tournament, playing beyond their normal skill, the writer who looks up and realizes the sun has set. But what exactly is happening here? Why do humans crave this feeling? And how can science help us experience it every single day? To answer that, we must leave the cliffs of Yosemite and travel back in time. Back to an ancient world where warriors trained for battle and artists disappeared into their work for days on end. Because long before psychology had a name for it, humans were already chasing flow. To understand flow, we must first see how it has appeared again and again across history. Long before scientists named it, before brain scans revealed it, warriors, artists, musicians, and thinkers were chasing this state of effortless control. Because flow is older than psychology itself. Imagine 16th century Japan. A lone samurai stands on a misty training field at dawn. He practices Kyudo, the ancient art of archery. But here's the twist. In Kyudo, the goal isn't hitting the target. The goal is entering the state of mushin, meaning the mind of no mind. When the archer releases the arrow, there is no fear, no hesitation, no distracting thoughts. Centuries before modern psychology, Zen masters described mushin exactly like flow. Effortless action, deep concentration, loss of self-consciousness. A famous Zen proverb says, "The archer aims at himself and may hit the target without aiming at it." It wasn't about the arrow, it was about becoming one with the act itself. Now, let's cross continents. It's the late 1400s in Florence, Italy. In a small studio, Leonardo da Vinci bends over a canvas. He is sketching the human hand muscles, tendons, bone structure for hours on end. Historical notes say Da Vinci would often forget to eat or sleep while working. His apprentices sometimes found him painting at sunrise, having been awake all night. This wasn't obsession in the unhealthy sense. It was flow. Da Vinci himself wrote, "When I thought I was learning to live, I was learning to die. When I thought I was learning to paint, I was learning to see." His art was not just painting. It was total immersion in life itself. Centuries earlier, in ancient Greece, a mathematician named Archimedes lowered himself into a bath. As the water rose, he realized the volume displaced could measure density. In that instant of clarity, Archimedes leapt out shouting, "Eureka! I have found it!" He had been thinking about the problem for days, but the breakthrough came in a single rush of flow when the conscious mind steps back and the subconscious delivers answers fully formed. Fast forward to the 20th century. A jazz musician named Miles Davis stands on stage. The band begins improvising. No sheet music, no plan. Each player listens, responds, creates, and suddenly, the music seems to play itself. Psychologists call this group flow when not just one person, but an entire team enters the zone together. One musician later said, "Time stopped. We weren't playing the music was playing us." And today, we see flow in esports arenas. A gamer in a world championship match plays at a speed and accuracy beyond normal training. Reaction times shorten, mistakes vanish. After the game, reporters ask how he pulled off impossible moves. The player shrugs. "I don't know, I was just in the zone." Whether it's archery, art, mathematics, music, or gaming, flow always feels the same: effortless, timeless, selfless, and deeply satisfying. What connects a samurai on a misty field, a Renaissance genius in his studio, a mathematician in his bath, a jazz band in full improvisation, and a modern gamer under blinding lights? Across cultures, across centuries, across disciplines, the state they all touched is the same. But what causes it? What exactly is happening in the mind and the brain when a human being enters flow? To find out, we leave the painters, the samurai, the musicians, and we step into the world of science. Because in the 1970s, one psychologist set out to measure flow and discovered patterns that would change how we understand human performance forever. In 1975, a young psychologist named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi sat in his small university office in Chicago, staring at a single question written on his notepad. What makes a life worth living? Not what makes people survive. Not what makes them successful. But what makes life truly fulfilling. He didn't find the answer in money, or fame, or even happiness. Instead, he found it in something else entirely. A mental state he would soon call flow. Csikszentmihalyi began interviewing artists, athletes, musicians, even chess players. He asked, "What moments in life feel so absorbing? You forget everything else?" Again and again, people described the same thing. A deep sense of focus, a merging of action and awareness, a loss of time. They weren't thinking about rewards. They weren't even thinking about themselves. One climber told him, "When I'm on the mountain, I don't exist. There is only the next move." A composer said, "I hear the music, as if it were coming through me, not from me." It didn't matter if it was art, sport, or work. This state of total absorption was universal. After years of research, Csikszentmihalyi identified 8 key signs of flow. 1. Clear goals. You know exactly what to do next. 2. Immediate feedback. Success or failure is obvious. 3. Balance between challenge and skill. Too easy, you get bored. Too hard, you get anxious. Flow lives in between. 4. Merging of action and awareness. You become the activity. 5. Concentration on the task. Distractions disappear. 6. Loss of self-consciousness. The inner critic goes silent. 7. Sense of control. Even in chaos, you feel capable. 8. Transformation of time. Minutes feel like seconds or hours. Think about the last time you lost yourself in a book, a sport, or even a conversation. That was flow. In the 1980s, Csikszentmihalyi wanted proof. So he created a device called the experience sampling method. Here's how it worked. Hundreds of participants wore beepers. At random times during the day, the beeper would go off. Participants had to write down what they were doing and how they felt. After thousands of samples, the patterns were undeniable. People felt happiest, not while resting, not watching TV, not doing nothing. They felt happiest when fully engaged in a challenging, meaningful activity. Work often produced more flow than leisure. Why? Because passive entertainment doesn't challenge us. Flow demands action. This was revolutionary. We think happiness comes from relaxation, vacations, comfort. But the data showed the opposite. The human brain loves struggle with purpose. That's why climbing a mountain, writing a book, or training for a marathon often brings more joy than lying on a beach for a week. As Csikszentmihalyi wrote, happiness is not something that happens. It is the product of one's actions. Flow isn't about escaping life. It's about immersing yourself in it. Later studies scanned the brains of athletes, musicians, even surgeons during flow. What they found was stunning. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that worries about the past and future, actually quieted down. Scientists call this transient hypofrontality. With self-criticism offline, creativity soared. Dopamine and norepinephrine levels rose, sharpening focus and learning speed. Some researchers now call flow the brain's peak performance state. It's not just psychology, it's biology. Consider Dr. Tony Fadell, an engineer at Apple. When designing the first iPod, his team often worked 12, 14-hour days. Not because they had to, but because they lost themselves in the challenge. Later, he said, we weren't thinking about money or deadlines. We were obsessed with making something beautiful. That obsession was flow. The iPod wasn't just a product. It was born from a mental state where work felt like play. But here's the secret. Flow doesn't just happen randomly. It can be designed. There are conditions that make it more likely, and habits that can turn ordinary days into peak experiences. In the next section, we uncover the science of how to trigger flow on demand, step by step. By now, we've seen what flow looks like, from samurai archers to Renaissance artists to modern scientists. But here comes the most exciting part. Flow is not magic. It is trainable. You can design your life, your work, even your hobbies to unlock the state of effortless control more often. And the process begins with a simple framework. Psychologists call it the flow channel, the sweet spot between boredom and anxiety. Here's how it works. If a task is too easy, you get bored. If it's too hard, you panic. But when skill and challenge rise together, you enter the flow zone. Imagine learning the piano. At first, even simple songs feel challenging. Your brain struggles. But soon they become easy, boring even. To stay in flow, you must raise the challenge as your skill grows. That's why video games keep getting harder. Each level pushes you just enough to keep you hooked. The same rule works for life. Professional climber Alex Honnold once explained why he tackles increasingly difficult routes. The best moments of my life are when I'm right on the edge of falling, but still in control. That balance between chaos and mastery is where flow lives. Your brain loves clarity. If you don't know what success looks like, flow disappears. That's why athletes set lap times, writers set word counts, coders chase bug-free builds. And it's why games give you scores, levels, and rewards. Feedback keeps your brain locked in. One study on surgeons found they entered flow most often when operating on tasks that gave instant, visible results. Clear goals, immediate feedback, no confusion. That's the formula. Psychologists once studied jazz musicians during improvisation. They found musicians entered flow most when they could hear themselves instantly, every note, every chord. If the audio feedback was delayed, flow collapsed. Why? Because flow needs a loop between action and response, like a conversation with the world. In a world buzzing with notifications, distractions kill flow faster than anything. Csikszentmihalyi's research found it takes 20 minutes to fully refocus after a single interruption. That's why top performers create rituals. Writers disable Wi-Fi. Athletes wear headphones. Programmers use noise-canceling rooms. One novelist even writes on a computer with no internet browser, just to keep the flow unbroken. Neuroscientists discovered the brain can only handle 9,120 minutes of deep focus before needing rest. So peak performers use flow blocks. 90 minutes of full focus, 15-minute break. Repeat. This rhythm mirrors natural cycles in the brain called ultradian rhythms. It's why world-class violinists and even Olympic swimmers train in short, intense bursts rather than all day. Flow often appears when the stakes feel real. Risk sharpens attention. That's why extreme athletes, entrepreneurs, even live performers often report flow more than people doing routine tasks. But risk doesn't have to mean danger. It can mean speaking on stage for the first time, launching a creative project online, competing in a hackathon. Anything that pushes you out of autopilot can ignite flow. A young speaker once admitted being terrified before his first TED Talk. But halfway through, the fear vanished. He said, "I was so focused on sharing the idea, I forgot myself completely." That's flow, fear turning into fuel. Environment matters. Artists build inspiring studios. Athletes have ritualistic locker rooms. Writers visit the same coffee shops daily. Familiarity signals the brain. It's time to enter the zone. One study showed workers in nature-inspired offices hit flow more often than those in windowless rooms. The takeaway? Light, air, sound, space, all shape mental states. Finally, the strongest flow trigger, meaning. You enter flow most easily when the task connects to something bigger than yourself. That's why musicians lose themselves in music, teachers in teaching, scientists in discovery. Purpose turns work into play. But here's the mystery. Some people can reach flow almost on command. Athletes call it the switch. Artists call it the muse. What separates them from everyone else? In the next section, we uncover the habits, routines, and mental models of people who live in flow, and not once in a while, but every single day. Some people touch flow by accident once in a while, but a few live there. Day after day, year after year, they step into the state of peak performance almost on command. What's their secret? It turns out, flow loves rituals. Many flow masters start the day with a priming ritual, a set of actions that tell the brain it's time to focus. Writers like Maya Angelou rented small hotel rooms just to write in silence. Psychologist William James called it harnessing the energy of habit. Even Winston Churchill began mornings painting before facing wartime decisions. One study on musicians found those who had pre-performance routines reached flow twice as often as those who didn't. Why? Because rituals lower uncertainty. They prepare the mind for deep work. Maya Angelou wrote in the same way for decades. A bare hotel room, a dictionary, a Bible, a bottle of sherry. She said, "I keep a hotel room. I have all the paintings taken off the wall. I bring a Bible, a deck of cards, and some crossword puzzles. And I write." Stripped of distraction, she entered flow. Neuroscience shows the brain can handle about 4 hours of true deep work per day. That's why many top performers schedule 2 morning blocks of 90 minutes, 2 afternoon blocks of 60 minutes. No multitasking, no interruptions. The author Cal Newport calls this deep work, the ability to focus without distraction on cognitively demanding tasks. Flow needs time walls. Psychologist Carl Jung built a stone tower in the Swiss countryside. No electricity, no phone, just him, his notebooks, and silence. There, he developed some of the most profound ideas in psychology. Jung said, "I need a place where I can be what I am, where I can work things out." That was his flow sanctuary. Surprisingly, many flow masters move their bodies before deep work. Beethoven walked for hours before composing. Steve Jobs held walking meetings. Nietzsche acclaimed he wrote best while hiking. Modern neuroscience confirms exercise boosts dopamine and norepinephrine, key flow chemicals. A brisk walk or workout primes the brain for focus. When stress spikes, flow vanishes. But Harvard researcher Herbert Benson found a way back. The relaxation response. Deep breathing, mindfulness, quick meditative breaks. Even 90 seconds of slow, deep breathing lowers cortisol, resetting the brain for flow. That's why Navy SEALs use the box breathing method before missions. 4 seconds inhale, 4 hold, 4 exhale, 4 hold, calm body, focus mind. Flow hates multitasking. Warren Buffett once said, "The difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything." Many flow masters pick one main challenge per day. A novel chapter, a design sprint, a single presentation. By cutting noise, they dive deeper. Ernest Hemingway had a famous trick. He stopped writing each day mid-sentence. Why? So the next morning, he knew exactly where to start, slipping into flow faster. Flow masters often end the day reviewing their work. What went well? Where did flow appear? What killed it? Leonardo da Vinci kept hundreds of notebook pages, tracking ideas, sketches, even mistakes. Reflection builds self-awareness, the foundation for tomorrow's flow. These habits turn ordinary days into flow states. But what about the dark side? Because flow, for all its power, is not always used for good. History shows some of the most dangerous moments happened when people entered flow pursuing destruction, not creation. We've explored flow, the state of peak performance, creativity, focus, joy. But there's a side of flow we haven't yet faced, because flow doesn't care about morality. It can fuel creation, but also destruction. History shows warriors entering flow on battlefields, samurai in Japan, Viking berserkers in Europe, modern soldiers in combat. One soldier from World War II described battle saying, "I didn't feel fear, I didn't feel time. I was just moving, reacting, almost like watching myself." It was flow, but used for survival, and sometimes for violence. In 1995, a trader named Nick Leeson entered a mental state he later described as hyper-focused, almost detached. He made rapid-fire trades, losing sense of time, risk, reality. For weeks, he was in flow, until he lost over $1 billion and destroyed an entire bank. Flow had become obsession. When control vanishes, flow can spiral into danger. Extreme sports psychologists call it the flow addiction. Surfers, base jumpers, big wave riders often chase bigger risks just to feel that same high. Neuroscientists explain why. Flow releases dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. Too much, and the brain craves it like a drug. One professional poker player admitted, "I didn't love the money. I loved the trance. The hours disappearing, the cards moving, the world shrinking to nothing but the table." Flow gave him focus, but also pulled him into obsession. So what's the answer? How do we harness flow without falling victim to its dark side? Psychologists suggest 3 guardrails. 1. Purpose. Tie flow to something meaningful. Creation, learning, contribution. 2. Boundaries. Set clear work-rest cycles. Prevent obsession by scheduling breaks. 3. Reflection. Review each day. Ask, did this serve my life, Isha, or control it? Flow is power, but power demands responsibility. Imagine designing your life like this. Morning ritual primes your mind. Focused work blocks carry you into deep flow. Movement, reflection, and meaning keep you grounded. Boundaries prevent burnout. Day after day, you enter the zone. Not by chance, not by luck, but by design. A Japanese potter once said, "My hands know the clay better than my mind does. When I work, there is no me, only the shape forming itself." He lived his whole life this way. Not chasing fame, not chasing money, just flow. And in the end, his work outlived him. Flow is not about escaping life. It's about entering it fully. Every moment, every action, every breath. And if you design your days around challenge, focus, meaning, you won't just find flow once in a while. You will live there.